Hello, my little sunbuns. My name is Velky, and welcome to our very first weekly Yap session on the Velky Extra channel. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, feel free to check out the video that I made yesterday on my main channel. But for the ones that are here, I'm sure most of you came over from that video, and I thought, you know, why not just immediately jump right in with our very first topic, our very first video. For the ones that have seen the video, I saw that a lot of people commented very sweet comments, but nobody actually posted like any topics for me to talk about. Luckily, I had a couple of topics lined up for myself, and I thought, what other topic can we talk about other than my life as a femboy? I think that is something that might be interesting to a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys are femboys, or have started out becoming femboys, or maybe a couple of you guys are interested in being a femboy, but you have no idea, you know, what it's all about and what the life is like, I guess. I figured, why not talk about this kind of thing on the second channel on Velky Extra, where I will be making weekly videos about random topics that you want me to talk about. So if there's something that you want me to talk about, please leave a comment below, leave a like and subscribe also, so that you don't miss out on future uploads where I just yap your entire ears full with random stuff I talk about. And this is kind of like how my streams are as well, but unfortunately I don't have a chat to talk to this time, so I'm kind of like on my own, but you know, it is what it is. And I would like to kickstart off this video with my femboy experience and just my femboy life. And I'd like to start with the very beginning, because ultimately, yes, there is a part of my life where it kind of had a tipping/turning point, but I think it's also interesting to kind of look at my past life, because surely there's a video on my main channel talking about, like, you know, how I became a femboy, but it, you know, it only talks about 2023, it only talks about 2024, where I kind of just discovered it more or less. But I do believe that when I look back at my life, there's a lot of moments, a lot of little indicators that kind of showed me that there was a bit of like a hint towards like my feminine side that was a lot more apparent than other people in most cases. And I figured, why not just start from the very beginning? So maybe, you know, you can relate to that. Maybe there's just some small things that I can tell you that maybe will help you discover yourself as well, because ultimately it is just a huge journey of discovery, things that you can't really figure out until maybe you see someone else in the same shoes, and it's kind of like, oh shit, maybe I'm part of that group, or maybe I'm part of this niche, or this personality that I think fits me, right? So to start it off, when we go all the way back to the beginning, when I was very young, and there were a lot of indicators honestly that kind of showed like my feminine side in many cases. When I was young, I was not like the other kids, and I think that kind of makes sense, because I mean, look at me, I'm sitting here as a VTuber talking to people online. When I was younger, I was different. I think in most cases, you know, you have this very typical societal standard of like, this is what a boy should be like, this is what a man should be like, the masculinity, this is the kind of toys they should be playing with, this is the kind of clothing they should be wearing, you know. The societal pressure of what a man should be like is put upon us from a young age, depending on where you live especially, right? So like when I was younger, I used to watch like Winx Club. I really wanted to, you know, play with dolls. I think dressing up was cool. I thought being really girly was kind of like my vibe. Honestly, my personality was very girly. I was very feminine for a kid in comparison to the guys, you know. I grew up with conservative parents, and because of that, you know, there was never really an opportunity for me to be outside of the societal norm of being a man. I never really had the opportunity to even think about that, because, you know, you have conservative parents that really follow that strict societal rule and norm, and they want to put you under that as well, because that's kind of like how they were raised. So I guess it kind of makes sense. Parents would tell me like, oh, you know, don't like boys because that's weird, you know, why would you want to wear girly clothes? That's weird. Why would you want to play with girl toys? That's weird. I couldn't do certain things because my gender, my biological sex, was ultimately not fitting in that category. But still, when I was younger, I still thought about it, and I genuinely thought that maybe I was crazy, maybe there was something wrong with me. And that's the thing that sucks, right? I think because when you are younger, you don't know much, right? Like, you don't know what life is like, you don't know what you want to be, you don't even know who you are. There's just thoughts in your head that come around and tell you certain things, and you think you're like insane because the societal norm is the one that's telling you, hey, this is not something you should be doing as a man. And it's like, okay, but who the fuck decided that, right? But yeah, I just lived through that when I was a kid. When I was in elementary school, I actually used to have like this play date, quote unquote, with one of my friends. And that was also a guy, and he also turned out to be gay from what I have heard. But when I was quote unquote playing or just like hanging out with him in elementary school, we used to like role play like the fairies in Wings Club. And I know that's really like really kind of cringe to think about, but I was like, what, 7 years old, you know, like 8 years old. Like don't blame me, okay? Like I was really young back in the days when I used to watch Wings Club. Nobody else did. I was the weird person. I was the weird guy for liking it, because none of the other guys in my class, for example, liked that, except that one gay guy, quote unquote, right? It is definitely like a signifier for me to be like, oh, you know, maybe there was something back in my childhood that actually explains also now the way I am. After elementary school, I went into high school and middle school, of course. That's where a lot of things changed, because that's where you go through puberty and you become a teenager. And that's the time of your life where you really start becoming a bit rebellious. You become a bit, you know, I want to be the person that I want to be type shit, right? Like it's really typical for teenagers to start acting out. It's really typical for teenagers to become kind of annoying, let's be real. You might be able to look back to yourself and be like, damn, I was really fucking annoying back in the days. And I feel the same way. I think that when I was younger, I used to be rebellious, and I still am pretty rebellious, but I think at the time I was way more rebellious than I am now. You know, I acted out a lot and I wanted to be myself a lot more, but it was difficult, especially like middle and high school, because like, yeah, there's bullying, and obviously you don't want to like be more feminine because all the kids there are gonna bully you, right? You don't want to get bullied and shit like that. And I was one of those kids that were bullied because I am Asian, so obviously in a Western country, you already know where that's going, you know. Ultimately, I got bullied just for being the race I am, for example, which already sucked. And I thought to myself, you know, I don't want to really present myself more feminine in that regards. That be kicking myself in the balls when it comes to that, I guess, you know. And even in middle school, my best friend and most of my friends, honestly, were more girls. I got along better with girls, funnily enough, than I did with guys. I understood girls better. I understood their mindset a lot better. The feminine side of things made more sense to me in some cases. Middle and high school wasn't really super interesting. I really wasn't able to explore myself too much. I wasn't really able to step out of my comfort zone too much because of the fact that being scared of being bullied or just being judged. After I finished high school and graduated, I went to university, where things changed, because I think once people go to university, people are like less prone to like being bullies about certain things. There wasn't really that much of like issue when it comes to like my race, obviously, which was great. And I met a lot of different kind of people because I went into IT. Who could have guessed, right? Well, the IT Femboy pipeline. So I started doing IT. I met some people, and one of the guys that I actually met during my university was a really feminine guy. You know, he was like this really bulky, very muscular guy, but he was kind of short, and he was very feminine. And he wasn't gay, I think. He was very straight, quote unquote. In my head at the time, I was like, what the fuck is going on, right? Like, because this is not really what I'm used to. So the environment was different, the place was different, and I felt a little bit awkward because I kind of liked the idea that he was more feminine, because he kind of showed a personality of himself that I didn't see in most of my lives. When I was in the high school and middle school, none of the moments that I ever had indicated there was like a guy being really feminine, except like that gay guy back in like elementary school. But that's about it. That's one guy out of the hundreds I've met, right? And seeing him being an adult and still being that way kind of made me think about certain things, like, oh, that's kind of cool that, you know, he can just be himself here and it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. I didn't judge him. I actually really liked it because I felt like he, like I said before, he could really let his personality shine more. So that was really cool, and I learned how to be more of an adult because of him, because he was in university and he was, I think, in his 20s. So he always told me that you shouldn't really give a fuck about what people think about you, because there's always going to be people disliking you, but that shouldn't be holding you back from being happy. That shouldn't hold you back from being yourself. It's boring if we live in a world where every single guy is the same. So there's nothing wrong with being like a man that is more feminine. And the same goes for women. There's nothing wrong with women being masculine either. That's something he kind of like taught me, if that makes sense, to understand it's fine. It doesn't matter. Unfortunately, I never really tapped into it too much because obviously at that time I was still a bit in that phase of like, yeah, I'm straight. I'm just a normal guy, nothing special about me, you know, nothing interesting when it comes to like the feminine side. I suppressed it a lot. That's what it comes down to. And because of the environment that I was in, the people I was around when I was younger has conditioned me into thinking that the way how I was, the feminine side of me was not okay. And with these people, I mean the people that I had in high school and before that, made me believe that if I would be too feminine, that, you know, I'd get bullied or it would be a bad thing or it would hurt me in some way or form. And as time have moved on, I eventually became a content creator. I started making videos and you know, had a lot of fun. And then there was one day, there was this one chatter of mine that said to me like, you remind me of a femboy. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Then one day my chat on Twitch bought me thigh highs. I was originally really against it because I was like, why would you do that? There's no point for me to have these socks anyway. And then at some point I was like, you know what if I just put them on? And that's kind of like where the turning point was. I put on the thigh highs, I made a picture, I posted it on Twitter at the time. People really loved it, I guess. You know, they thought the picture was cool and they liked it, and that made me feel good. Because honestly, it is a very quote-unquote feminine thing to do, to wear thigh highs as a man, but then to also be praised / appreciated for it or not being judged for it in a negative way was honestly really comforting. You know, it wasn't really meant in like a lewd or sexual way. I think for me, it was more a sense of comfort. For me, I finally felt like that I had a place where I could be myself more, where I can actually present myself more feminine without really having people judge me for who I am. As my content creation career moved on as well, and the way how I became a VTuber, and the more I tapped into the feminine boy aesthetic / personality, I kind of started realizing that I've always been this way. You know, ultimately, in most cases, I've always been very feminine. It's just that the thing about my femininity is that my environment, the people around me, caused me to suppress it. You know, and the confidence of having that not giving a fuck mindset wasn't really there. I did care at the time what people thought about me, but now I have this outlet of people, you guys, my community, where I can be myself and you can also be yourself, of course, right? That has given me also the opportunity and confidence to do it more publicly too. You know, it started out with the thigh highs in my bedroom. It started out with the simple, you know, being a content creator online and talking about feminine things and being myself a little bit more. So it helped me become more comfortable with how I was as a person and how it was okay to be a femboy, how it was okay to be feminine. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I fall under the entire category of what a femboy is considered nowadays, right? Because femboys come in all different shapes and sizes, and nobody should judge a femboy for how they are. It is a personality that is tied to you. It is a guideline of what you should want to become, quote unquote, but you don't have to follow every single point of being a femboy, right? You don't have to, like I said, I always speak up about this kind of stuff. You don't have to look like a stolfo. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do HRT. You don't have to do, you know, you don't have to wear feminine clothing every day. You don't have to wear makeup. You don't have to do this. That term should not define you. It should be a way to help you discover yourself. If you are a femboy, it should be used as a way to help you discover yourself as a person. If you want to be strictly a femboy based on the terminology and how the internet sees the femboy, you're putting yourself in a new cage that the societal norm standard has already put you in when you were younger. It's the same thing as like, okay, you have to be this way if you're a man, because otherwise you're not considered a man. What's the point? In my eyes, I am very feminine, yes, and you can consider me a femboy, but I can also be considered a soft boy. I am not always necessarily feminine. I have moments where I feel feminine. I have moments where I feel more masculine, and it switches around. It's not really super stable. There's also something that is regarding my gender, I guess, in that case, but that is a topic for another video. The moral of the story here is that you shouldn't really let yourself be caged in when it comes to the terms of femboy, masculinity, or femininity, or any societal standard that is being put down upon you from a young age, or even now. I think at this point in life, self-expression is one of the most important things in the modern age. And I think it's also very important for you to remember that if you put yourself under the term of a femboy and follow the rules so strictly like you think you should, you are simply putting yourself in another cage that eventually will make you unhappy, because there's just things that you might not feel like you agree with or things that you align with. And I exploit a lot of my femboy side by wearing more dresses and, you know, certain clothing. And, you know, there's some things that I don't like, there's things that I do like, but ultimately what it comes down to, I'm a very feminine boy, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing wrong with that. It's something that I had to discover. I had the opportunity to do so, and I hope that, you know, this helps you too, to find a way in order to be more comfortable with yourself and to find a way to discover your feminine side. Or maybe even for the ladies, if there's any ladies watching and you are the opposite and you want to be more tomboyish, there's nothing wrong with women trying to look more towards the masculine side. It's the same thing. Don't let yourself be limited by societal standards. Don't let yourself be limited by the cages of a term. It doesn't matter. Be yourself. Be who you want to be, and use those terms as a guideline to help you become the person that you want to be, your best self. I know a lot of you guys struggle maybe when it comes to like the environment that you're around, and just like me, maybe it's the people around you that are pressuring you, that are holding you back. I just want you to remember one thing, that hopefully this does help you, but it is never really worth risking your safety. Right? It's about your life and safety. I grew up in a country which was the Netherlands, and people are more open here about certain things like that. I had the opportunity and privilege to be able to explore myself. And it's sad to think that self-expression is a fucking privilege in this world, but unfortunately it is. Unfortunately, in some cases, in some countries, and in some places in the world, you cannot do this. You would do this and you would probably not be here anymore, if that makes sense, to put it lightly. And for those people, I want you to remember that you should stay strong, because one day you'll be able to get out of that situation. It is the journey to happiness that you want to make, to eventually become the person that you are destined to be, right? It's a bit cheesy to say it like that, but that's how I feel. You should give yourself the time, allow yourself the time to firstly find a place where you're safe and can express yourself. That's why we have outlets like these, my community, where you can come by and always talk to me or just hang out with the people around us to help yourself discover yourself a little bit more. You guys have given me an outlet to be myself. Now I want to give you an outlet as well. And that's ultimately what my journey has come to. And my journey has eventually led me to this position where I am extremely blessed, extremely privileged to be in this position as a content creator, to share my stories with you guys. And I love sharing my stories with you guys, and I love talking about stuff like this, and I hope you found it interesting. Hopefully this has helped you in a certain way. You know, if there's things that you disagree on, I mean, that is totally fine. Not everyone has to agree with me, not everyone has to experience life the same way as me. And with that being said, make sure to leave a comment if you enjoyed the video or if there's something you want to say, but also at the same time, leave a topic in the comments, please, so I can have some more topics to talk about. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you haven't checked me out yet on Twitch, you can at twitch.tv/velkyan. Also join the Discord at discord.gg/velky so you can stay up to date with all my content. And with that being said, I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys around. Bye!